They laughed when Henry called me a nobody. My husband raised his glass and joined in. What none of them knew was that the nobody they mocked owned 68% of their precious company. And before that night was over, every single one of them would learn exactly who I was. Asterisk. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss an incredible story like this one. Asterisk. The laughter rolled through the ballroom like a slow, poisonous wave. Crystal chandeliers glittered above polished marble floors, catching every cruel smile, every smirk, every drink lifted in mock celebration. Henry Lawson tilted his whiskey glass, letting the amber liquid shimmer like gold as he leaned closer to me, the scent of Scotch sharp in the air. "How does it feel?" he said, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. To be a nobody? The room erupted in laughter. Not polite, nervous laughter. Real laughter, the kind that wounds, sharp and deliberate. My husband, Michael, stood near the bar in his black tuxedo, laughing harder than anyone else. His champagne glass lifted as though this humiliation were entertainment. I smiled, a small, practiced smile. But inside, something clicked like a trigger. "Funny you should ask," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Because it must feel strange to realize this nobody owns 68% of your company." Silence fell so hard it rang in my ears. Someone dropped a fork. The CEO's bourbon froze halfway to his lips. Michael's champagne glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the marble. The golden liquid, pooling like spilled secrets. That was the moment everything changed. The day had begun like every other, for the past 22 years. My alarm went off at 5:30 a.m. Michael's didn't wake him anymore. It never did. I moved through the dark house, quiet as a shadow, making his breakfast. Egg whites folded perfectly, toast golden, orange juice smooth and pulp-free. By the time his voice called from upstairs, "Where's my navy tie?" I was already there, coffee in hand, tie ready. He didn't say thank you. He never did. "Black dress tonight," he'd said, already checking emails. Be appropriate. That was what I'd become after giving up everything appropriate. Not brilliant, not feared, just silent. But silence had never meant surrender. 7 years earlier, I'd taken my father's insurance money and built Stonebridge Equity, an invisible empire made of shell companies and quiet precision. While they laughed, I'd been buying them, piece by piece, until their entire world sat quietly in the palm of my hand. That night, as Henry swaggered toward me with his drink and his arrogance, I already knew how the game would end. He was a man who never expected anyone to fight back. Michael's company dinner was always the same. The powerful men took center stage, the wives smiled, and the room smelled like old money and expensive lies. Henry dragged a chair out beside me without asking, his cologne thick in the air. "Michael says you keep busy," he said, mocking already. "What is it, Pilates? Charity brunches?" "I manage investments," I said evenly. He threw back his head and laughed, a sound that gathered the room's attention like a magnet. "Investments? Oh, that's cute." He raised his glass. "I mean, let's be honest. You live off your husband. You're a decoration." And then, louder, projecting so everyone could hear, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a question. What does it feel like to be a nobody?" The laughter came like a wave. Even Michael's. Especially Michael's. I searched his face for something, a hint of discomfort, loyalty, shame. Nothing. Only laughter. Something inside me stilled. It was like stepping into cold water. Shocking, but clarifying. I set my wine glass down slowly. The tiny click echoed like a gunshot in the silence between laughs. When I stood, the sound of my heels on marble pulled every eye to me. "You're absolutely right, Henry," I said. "I am a nobody." His grin widened. "A nobody who owns 68% of your company." 3 long heartbeats of silence. The CEO's face drained of color. Someone whispered. Michael stood frozen, his hands trembling. I pulled out my phone, tapped twice, and set it on the nearest table. The Stonebridge Equity letterhead glowed on the screen. 7 years ago, the company had been 48 hours from collapse. A mysterious investor group had wired $40 million overnight. That investor had been me. I'd saved them, and then I'd owned them. Quietly, completely, they called legal. Legal confirmed. The laughter died. The next 72 hours unfolded like a symphony I'd been composing for years. Sunday night, Michael came home pale and desperate. He rifled through papers, called lawyers, asked questions I didn't bother answering. Monday morning, my lawyer Victoria arrived with boxes. Proof of Marcus's embezzlement, $500,000, on private jets to Vegas. Proof of the CEO's shell contracts. Fraud, nepotism, misconduct. Years of rot under the polish. Surfaced. Tuesday. I walked into the boardroom not as Michael's wife but as their owner. David, the CEO, tried to talk. I slid the folder across the table. His face broke like glass. Security escorted him out 15 minutes later. Marcus was next up by Friday. The same ballroom where they had laughed at me was filled with 300 people, shareholders, employees, press. I wore a white Armani suit Michael had once called too bold. This time, no one dared laugh. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice steady and sharp. "My name is Isabella Warren. Through Stonebridge Equity, I own 68% of Lawson Technologies." The screen behind me flashed images. Bank transfers, signatures, travel records. Henry's Vegas trips. Marcus's expense reports. David's fake contracts. Employee layoffs. Executive bonuses. "Michael Warren," I said, eyes locking on my husband sitting in the back row, looking like a man who finally realized he was standing on sand. Effective immediately, he no longer holds a position at Lawson Technologies. No severance. No parachute. No empire built on my silence. Phones recorded every second of it. Michael stood. Cameras followed. The man who had laughed at me walked out alone. But this was not just destruction. I announced the Phoenix Initiative, a fund to support women whose ambitions had been buried under someone else's story. Scholarships. Grants. Second chances. Applause filled the ballroom. This time, it was real. Months passed. The company thrived under Amelia Torres, the woman the board had ignored for years. Michael moved out quietly, taking nothing. Henry lost everything. Marcus faced criminal charges. David vanished. At night, my house felt bigger, emptier, quieter. The country club wives avoided me now. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was dangerous. And power is lonely. But when I stood by the window and looked out at the city lights, I knew the truth. I had waited 22 years for this moment. They had built their empires on my silence. I burned it down with one sentence. Because revenge isn't loud. It's silent, sharp, precise. And when it lands, it leaves nothing standing but the truth.